To learn about the off-grid lifestyle and to be inspired to live your dreams, click subscribe so you don't miss anything. Hit the bell notification. After I get the daily chores done today, I got some things I need to start worrying about. It's mid-July, it's probably the hottest day of the year so far. Well, I say mid-July, it's actually late July. I need to start worrying about winter. So here's my concern. I don't want it to sneak up on me. What I'm afraid is gonna happen is the meat chickens are gonna be ready to butcher. About the same time, I need to start preparing for winter. And I need to start thinking about the firewood. Is it ready? I need to get this tank in a position where I can keep it heated during the winter. And one of the ways I need to do that is I gotta get the ventilation from inside. I drilled a hole inside of the wall into the tank. And that way the tank will get heat from the wood stove during the winter. I just blow a little fan down into it and it keeps it nice and warm. On milder days, you know, it's still below freezing. Now I did have a little bit of trouble in February when the temperatures got down to about 0 degrees. Then I had some plumbing issues. My plumbing froze. So I had to do without. Now I have a solution to that. I can actually run my well straight into my house. I'd have to turn on the well every time. And so the ventilation, like I was saying, goes into the wall here, right there. And so I got to modify that a little bit. I did a little last winter, but I need to run this ventilation all the way to the other side of the tank and down to the pump. Now a lot of people told me I should turn the tank around. I mean, 6 one way, 1/2 dozen the other. I mean, I'd have to empty the water. And then my box, I designed my box so the other side has a door on the other side. Who knew that this was going to be an issue? So I got to extend my ventilation. That way I can run a fan and blow the hot air from inside the house all the way to the other side of the tank where the pump is. That should keep everything pretty thawed. Now, the other thing I do is I don't fill the tank all the way up in the winter. What I do is I let it run down about halfway. In the event that we have a cold snap, a real cold snap, then I fill the tank up the night before the cold snap. That way the hot water from the ground, it would be 60, 58, 60 degrees, would be much hotter than the water in here. That water will take longer to freeze than the water in the tank, because the water in the tank's already in the, let's say it was 32 degrees, right around that freezing point. Then I warm that tank back up to, let's say 40 degrees. That'll keep it a little bit warmer, plus the heat from the inside. Now, the ventilation from the inside goes all the way up inside the house, in between the shower and the wall. That way I'm sucking the air from the ceiling, and that keeps and so when the air temperature gets down into the tank, I think last winter I got it up to 90 degrees up by the ceiling. And when it got down here to the tank, the temperature was coming out about 70 degrees. So I lost 20 degrees through the transfer. And I've got blankets, these old military blankets, emergency blankets, whatever you call them. I had them in boot camp. And I got that wrapped around my ventilation. So even though last year was the first year using this tank, I had a lot of success with it, even though it froze during the big cold snap. The reason I think that was a success was because most of the winter, I didn't have a problem with it. Now, if the tank, I want to be clear, the tank never froze. It was just plumbing. Now, if I ever have a freezing problem again, I can actually run a hose from my well over here into the house through this window. And we'll be able to take showers and still maintain life. It'd be a lot more inconvenient because you won't be able to just turn on the water and you get water running like we have now. I'd have to come out, hook the hose up, because the hose is going to be inside because I don't want it to freeze. Turn the well on, run it through there, through the water heater. And then we can get our showers. Of course, we'd all have to be prepared because you can't shut the water off. Once the water's running, you wouldn't be able to shut it off unless I came back outside, shut the generator off. So it is an inconvenience, but here's the thing. I will never have frozen pipes. I know if you live in an apartment, you probably have never had frozen pipes. But I lived in a 100-year-old home and I always had frozen pipes at least once a year. Carolyn lived in a trailer. She always had frozen pipes at least once a year. We will never suffer without water, and we live off grid. That's what's so fascinating. Folks that actually live on the grid, they can, put heat tape around their pipes and everything, they still have freezing problems. We won't have that problem because we'll have our primary system, which is the tank, and a backup system, which is running a hose into our little water heater, on-demand water heater. It's a flawless system. I wish I'd have thought of that last year when we had a freezing problem, but I didn't. The biggest reason I'm not jumping into this project right now is there are brown recluse spiders in there, and brown recluse spiders are poisonous. There also may be some snakes in there hiding out. So I'm gonna wait until October. I know I just said earlier that I need to get this stuff done before October, but I just wanna make a mental checklist of things that I need to get done. I can still work on the ventilation on the inside. Right here, look at that. I mentioned spider. It's not a brown recluse. I don't know what that is, but that was something else. So now the other thing I need to think about is firewood. I need to start worrying about firewood. Now, one of the things that I wanted to keep an eye on this summer was my firewood. Anybody that was here with me in the wintertime knows that I really had a problem with the firewood. This is oak, and I cut the majority of this oak last July and August. And I know that people are going to argue with me, no, you don't need to do that, and they'll tell me that I could just bring the firewood in and let it dry by the house. All that's not true. You have to let the wood dry for at least a year, and with oak, sometimes 2 years. You have to let it get where see these cracks here? These cracks have to develop. They have to sound like 2x4s instead of wet wood. They have to sound like a 2x4 when you clank them together. They got to sound dry. The bark has to fall off easily, like that. These new modern wood stoves just require that the wood is dry. There's federal regulations on the whole thing, and the manufacturers of wood stoves have to follow these regulations. They have to have reduced pollution, and just on and on and on. Well, if you don't have dry firewood, it doesn't burn worth a crud in these new wood stoves. They got these reburners, and you can burn out the reburners. They got catalytic converters, and you can burn those out. You're going to build up a ton of creosote in your chimney. It's just a mess. And so last year we struggled a lot because we didn't have any dry firewood. Now, I've went through all this. We had that little outdoor wood heat exchanger that I built on the camper before we got into the tiny house. And so all the dry wood that we really had pretty much got used up in that. So we were really struggling when we got in a tiny house with this. And we'd find a piece here or there that was okay. I wanted to make sure that we're drying out appropriately. And we're about 23% with this. So it's not been quite a year, almost a year, and we're at 23%. You have to have a moisture tester. What you got to do is you got to split a log, and then you test the inside of the log. But I'm not going to split a log, but when you push these probes up against the log, inside the log, and you'll see, well, the outside is 12.2. So that's well within the criteria. But when you split it, there's still moisture inside that hasn't dried out. So we're about 23%. So it is drying. We were at 26, 27% this winter. So I watched a video of a guy, and he said that the wood would dry about 1% every month. Now, I don't know if he really knew what he was talking about because he wasn't really testing the wood correctly. He was going around testing all the wood on the outside. Even his comment section, no, you got to split it, which you do. You do have to split it. But I don't know, maybe he Googled it and it dries 1% each month. But it seems like he's accurate on that. It seems like that's the case. The stuff that I got earlier, I don't know, early spring, late winter, we got a lot of sycamore in there. Now, sycamore isn't as hard as oak. And I tested it, well, actually we got a lot of it right here that I didn't even split yet because it's so hard to split. Oh, it's just impossible to split. So it's dried out enough now that I can split it. So I tested it and it's just over 21%. So it's almost ready to go. I also have this walnut. I don't have a lot of it, but it was already dry last winter. So it'll be good and ready for the start of firewood season. So my thinking is between the sycamore and the walnut, that should get us through October. This is July, that's the end of July, so that'll be 3 months. I'll have to use this stuff. Now, it's not gonna be cold enough to run every day in there, so we should be able to have a good dry stockpile of oak when we start needing oak in late November and December. I got 7 cords, or maybe 8 cords of firewood here. I don't get down in here too often because, again, snakes. Definitely gonna have a snake problem here. So I showed you I was testing that firewood. Oh, I'm just so paranoid trying to pull a piece of wood out of there because I'm afraid there's going to be a copperhead in there. So I don't come down here too much. I come in, get the lawnmower, I check underneath the seat, check underneath the engine, you know, the hood, just to make sure there's no snakes in there before I start anything up. Very careful to take the tarp off. But I did need to test the firewood to make sure that it's drying out. Now, I had hoped that I would get a lot more firewood this summer than what I got. This summer, this is all I got right here and this is not a full length. I want to have 15 cords total. And I'm only going to use about a cord each year. So that's 15 years of firewood. Now you can treat this area so it's not going to rot. You keep it off the ground so the water doesn't get to it. It's not going to rot. It's oak. The reason I want to have that much firewood is that way when I get older and if I cannot cut firewood. So I hope I can inspire you to think about future dates when you're living your dream. Thanks for watching.